Hey everyone, this is Corey Cummins from Manly Combos. If you haven't joined Manly Combos before, let me just give you a quick background on who we are and what we're all about. Our goal is to destigmatize men's mental health by having all different types of conversations. So we have conversations with men that have gone to therapy. We have conversations with mental health professionals about specific topics associated to men. And we also talk to groups, nonprofits that are really coming up with different and innovative ways to basically help support men. And that's actually what today's about. So I was lucky enough, I reached out to Good Dude, Good Dad on Instagram, and they were kind enough to reply back to me. And I thought they had a really amazing initiative. And so just wanted to bring them on the podcast today to kind of get a better understanding of what they're doing and what they're offering, and also about their journey as well. So yeah, would you guys mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna let Mr. Jordan go first, or do you want me to go
You go
first?
first.
All right. I am Ben Briggs. I am from California. Been here pretty much my whole life, minus a little stint. I was in the Marine Corps, so traveled a lot. Went on a couple combat deployments. Came home, opened my own business, and here we are 14 years later. There's obviously a lot in between there, but I'll give the kind of like the highlight version. Good Dude, Good Dad came up because Jordan actually founded it, and I'll let him share his story on why. But for me, it was something that kind of similar to like your show and your message, right? Like there's a platform that's needed for more of this, whether it's a therapy related, whether it's us sharing our interactions together in a way of like storytelling,
Mhm.
um, using my life as an example, your life an example, Corey, your life as an example. Whatever those are, I think there just needs to be more platforms for men to be able to have like resources and communicate. But that's kind of like the quick down and dirty version of me and how I got to Good Dude, Good Dad.
Yeah, so my name's Jordan Aiden. I also down in California. I grew up kind of as an entrepreneurial family. Ended up working for the on the EMS side of things for quite a while. Went over, worked on a 911 ambulance for a long time. Ended up going all the way to paramedic, and then branched off and started my own businesses. And now I help run one of Ben's businesses as well on top of my own thing. But yeah, I mean about 3 years ago now, I suffered a stroke and almost died in my early 30s. And I had one young son and a 6 months until my second child was about to be born. And it kind of left me in a spot where I was trying to figure out if I did die, because there was still a chance that I could, how would I pass on what my dad had taught me and what I thought men should be like to my son. And then that led to like wanting to have more conversations about, how to be a better man and how to cope with life, and not cope, but like handle life and grow and be the best possible version of yourself, and then find a way to help other men who maybe didn't have dads or were struggling or needed something, because I saw some men around my life doing some things that I didn't think really represented men well, and represented fatherhood well. So I wanted to hopefully help change that, help steer that. And then yeah, Ben, I just about given up because I got too busy when Ben stepped in and was like, "Hey, man, there's a real need for this. There's a real space, and men really need to talk about the trials and tribulations, and come together and learn how to grow and learn how to be the best possible version of themselves." And that's kind of what this led into. Good dude, good dad.
Great. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's something I'm not a dad myself. I'm now a dog dad, but it's
There you
not the
go.
same thing. But I have a lot of friends who are dads, and I've had my own journey through mental health. And I think a lot of these things all correlate, whether it's being a better friend, being better for yourself, being a better parent. They all kind of coincide with each other. And I remember I was actually looking at your website, and I really appreciated kind of the mission, vision, and also that your program isn't just, or not your program, but your initiative isn't just about kind of coming together and speaking, but also you have these values that you want men to kind of portray in the world. Would you mind kind of going and talking a little bit more about really what is it that you guys are focusing on, how you're doing? Because it really resonated when I read what you're doing online.
Yeah, I'll take some of that, but I think for us it was kind of what you just said. Like there's there's I think a platform such as, things like podcasts, but then I think there's also just different visions and mission statements and things that um, Jordan and I find that in our lives have helped us get to where we're at. It doesn't mean it's a one size fits all. Um, and so for us, our goal is to be, just simply to share what we hold as our values. It might not be the same exact values to every single person out there, but I think the values that we picked and that kind of spoke to us do hit like a vast genre of people. Whether you come from a faith background or not, like we don't. That's not our goal. That's not our idea. But for us as believers, it is a something that we kind of hold to our values. But again, it's not a one size fits all. Basically what we're trying to do is essentially create something that, again, the values that we hold on to, we want them to be universal in the sense of, like, hopefully even what doesn't matter what background you come from, we can all kind of agree that some of these, like, strength, it's not just physical but emotional and mental, obviously, right? Kindness, it's a relentless pursuit of compassion and empathy towards others. The world needs more kindness, whether you're a man or not. Like, it doesn't matter, right? We just need more kindness in the world. Tenderness, the courage to show emotion and vulnerability. That goes towards, obviously, like, us as guys not having the ability to sometimes feel like we are, quote unquote, allowed to have these conversations because of the stigma of, oh no, man, I'm a man, I got to do this, I got to be tough, I went to war, so no, I can't have these emotional feelings. Well, in reality, like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But when I was younger, I would do that. I'm like, oh no, I went to Afghanistan, like, I'm tough. But when you look at it, like, how stupid is that? And how naive was I? And I think back then, it's just, especially, obviously, fast forward, or back then specifically, it was not as common for us to talk about feelings and what we're going through mentally or emotionally or physically, spiritually, all of those things. But yeah, I'm rambling. But anyways, the next one is sternness, the wisdom to be firm. And I think, there again, there's a misconception of what it's like to be strong in stature, strong in your demeanor, but still be tender and have compassion. And so I think for us, in a nutshell, we picked qualities and traits that can help you be a better man, whether you're a father or not, but just an overall better person. I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, that's solid. Yeah, I mean, I kind of, good dude, good dad. It kind of came together as like one thing, but originally I meant it to be like a good dude or a good dad. Like, it's not mutually exclusive. So the traits that we picked aren't just speaking to a father; it's speaking to, like, and not only that, is it doesn't speak to somebody who's like super macho manly man, or someone who is not really into that stuff, that has other ideals of what manliness is. It's supposed to be speak to something that's an overarching group of men, just kind of what men hold a really, really big part in society. So do women are, I'm not knocking that at all. But men hold a really integral part of society, and we just need more good people out there, because I think we've kind of lost what that means overarching. And I'm hoping that we bring that back a little bit.
No, I agree with all that. I think a lot of these things, it's even if you're not a dad, as you said, I think these are traits that everyone should really think about. I guess that some of the questions I have. So one of the things that I wrote down here is, so what are some of the things you see, with that dads struggle with the most, that kind of is consistent in your?
Well, that's a good one, because we talk about this too, and we've talked about it almost with every guest that we've had on so far, since since we kind of just actually launched the podcast side. We're in the space of having a lot of interviews lately, and so a lot of it's fresh. But I think anywhere you are in the world, but I'm going to speak specifically to where we're at in Southern California. I don't know if you've ever heard the term, like, the Orange County bubble before.
I could imagine what it means, but I don't know too well. Just a guess, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a real thing. And I think specifically for out here, again, it happens everywhere, but specific to Orange County, we find that a lot of dads, guys themselves, are constantly doing the comparison game, right? Like keeping up with the Joneses, especially with the social media instant gratification, like life that we're living in. It's, oh my gosh, like Jordan's crushing right now. He has this awesome new Maserati. He's got a house on the cliff overlooking the ocean. His business is hitting 500 million. Like, why am I not doing that? Why can't I have these things? Why am I busting my butt but not able to achieve the same results that he has? And so for like dad specific, I feel like dads get stuck constantly comparing themselves, which in reality is like a negative thing that's just going to overshadow everything you do. So to summarize that component, I think it's just the busyness that we are accustomed to living here, the keeping up, the comparison. And I think for dads out here, again, it's, we live in one of the most expensive places to live. So it's, you're constantly working, like work, work, work. And then you get home and you're dead, you're drained. But Jordan and I talk about it all the time. The second we chose to become fathers, you almost like forfeit a little bit of yourself for a little while. And what we mean by that is there's days, of course, don't get us wrong. Like I get home and I'm just dead. Like I'm pretty beat right now. I had a long weekend. The last thing I wanted to do is do a bunch of work. We have a couple podcasts today, and I have to remind myself, like, I get to do these things. And it's that same mentality when I get home tonight is I get to be my kid's dad. So they're either going to see me be an active, loving dad, or they're going to see me be the dad that comes home and just says hi and then goes sits his freaking ass on the couch and drinks a beer. You know what I mean? So we get to make that choice. And I think for dads here and all over, like we forget, like we get to make that choice.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, what I'm kind of seeing more is like, we're caught in two different types of generation, especially down by us. Like, so you grow up with, luckily I was fortunate to have a really, really good dad that was very present in my life. But it feels like we're coming out of the age of this very, very stern dad doesn't take a role in society. Dad doesn't help out at home. He goes to work and then he comes home and then he's just home and he's just a figure in the house. I feel like we're coming out of that stage into a stage where dads are very present in the home, or hopefully that's kind of our hope that when they are home, they are present. But I've also seen it go the exact opposite way where they're just like almost too passive. And it's finding that middle ground in between being the leader of your family, the leader of your house, partnering with your wife to create a safe, strong, healthy environment, and not overstepping your boundaries or playing too much of a either being too strong or too no, I'm just gonna let you guys do whatever. It's totally fine. Finding that nice balance in between, all while maintaining. I mean, here it's crazy. I mean, it's really expensive, and you would probably know living coming from New York previously, right? It's very, very expensive.
Yeah, London's expensive as well.
Right. So you get these dads that are putting in just massive hours a week, and then you're coming home and you're tired. And I'm seeing dads, not knocking them at all because I've definitely been there, but just at the park at the end of the day, just completely beat down and wiped, and just sitting there like as their kids like dad.
Or
dad.
they're on their phone.
And their kids like dad, look at this, dad, look at this, and they're just like yeah, whatever, do your thing. I'm taking a phone call or something like that. So
you see that in London a lot.
Yeah. So it's finding that balance. I mean, like yesterday I was just absolutely exhausted. I'd been up since like 4 a.m, just completely tired. I hadn't sat down all day, and I literally sat on the couch finally. And what did my son do? He came over and he goes, "Dad, I need you to play with me. Let's go, please play." And I literally I'm not gonna lie, I had nothing in the tank where I was like literally gonna fall asleep standing up. And guess what we did? We went out in the garage and we played. And the entire time I was like, this is fun, but I could totally fall asleep right now. So it's, like you said, you got to die a little bit to yourself every single day.
And so these are all great things. So how do you actually help men? Like, how does good dad actually help men with this? Because the mission statement makes complete sense. So if we were to use the OC bubble and men comparing themselves, which that's something you see in London, you see it in New York. It actually happens even without children. That's something that happens in general. So how do you actually help men with this?
I think there's a couple things we want to do, and this is also new and it's such a start, but I think the helping nature, I mean, you come from like the mental health side, right? So if I was to kind of go into that, the help component comes from genuinely being able to hear people share their own experiences, right? Like we
Sure.
want to, a buddy of mine used to say it all the time, but we want to be a platform for our guests and a resource for listeners. So if you're listening and you maybe are going through, maybe you had a stroke at a similar age as Jordan did, and only you know what that's like. I don't know. I don't know what he went through during that. He can tell me about it, but I don't get it, right? I went to 2 wars. I can tell you about it, but unless you've gone through it, you're not going to fully get it. So I think one of the ways we want to be able to try to help is by sharing stories from all walks of life. Great, great upbringings, bad upbringings, good dads in the home, no dads in the home, dads in the home. Like whatever that case is, I think just genuinely sharing and with it, not just sharing to talk and to see a podcast grow or to have a big Instagram following, like forget all of that crap. If one person takes something from one thing we say, one thing our guest says, one thing you say, I think for us, that's a win, right? Like, I know it sounds like cheesy to say, but if one person gets something from listening to something else somebody's going through, I consider that a win.
Yeah. How do we physically help people? I think part of it is, like you were saying, is bringing on different people to share their experiences and how they handle those experiences, right? Because every walk is going to be slightly different. I don't think that there's any tailor-made thing to fixing people. I remember you just did a podcast where you're talking about when you were out with your therapist and you said, hey, how long until I'm fixed? And he goes, Corey, if I knew that, I'd be a multimillionaire. Because that's, that we're the same way. Like if I knew how to fix the problems that I'm seeing, we would be just loaded. But what we want to do is we want to bring a safe space for people to talk through and almost like therapy, talk through or even talk about their therapy, their experiences and how they changed or how they're changing or how they're learning to change. So like a great example is our next podcast. We have a good friend of ours and we all just went on a hunting trip. Okay. That might not be your thing. It's just happens to be ours and it's not, it's okay. But he was talking about how just hanging around fellow dudes and fellow men and seeing how they interacted with their kids made him want to change and grow to be a better dad. And now he's taking that to therapy and working it through with his therapist on how to execute the thing. So maybe I'm rambling on. I have ADD, so this is a little hard for me sometimes to stay on topic. But
Listen, I'm taking notes on my pen, so it's the same thing.
So some of it is providing resource, some of it's just letting people know they're not alone, right? The
Sure.
power of loneliness is huge, right? If the power of loneliness can be crippling and debilitating, and knowing that you're not the only person out there going through something that everybody's life has struggles, that nobody actually is as perfect as Instagram looks, because Instagram is peak to peak to peak to peak. You're only showing the best side of yourself when you're on Instagram. Very rarely are you showing the times where you're like, you're at home yelling at your kids and you're like, bro, why did I just do that? Or I come home from a church event and I came home from a church event and someone cut me off and I honked my horn and I flipped them off. Was that awesome? Was that Christian? Was that good dude, good dad material? No, dude, I sucked in that moment. But we're all going to have moments like that, and sharing that it's okay to have moments like that. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to suck sometimes. It's okay to be tired sometimes. It's okay to be awesome sometimes. What matters is, are you creating an environment for yourself to grow? Are you creating an environment for your kids to grow? Do you want... My whole goal in life is, I've said this before, is I want my ceiling to be my kids' ground floor. So if I can help more dads hopefully have a mindset like that, where they want their kids to stand on their shoulders, that's really why we do all this, is for our kids to live a better life than we did.
Yeah, no, I grew up with a father, and both my parents are quite present. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was an entrepreneur, but I was lucky my dad was always around. And actually, I give him a lot of credit because he grew up very differently than me. He grew up very poor, and his father was a nice guy, but he really couldn't be present because he was manic. So he was in and out of a mental asylum. So, he could only do what he could. And my dad had to actually push him out of the house because it was just too much. And so it's actually always impressed me how my dad's been able to be such a good parent and such a good father. Now, when it comes to being really emotionally, aware and things like that, and being able to give emotionally, that's not really my father. Like, it's just not in his personality. Now, the way he gives is by action, but to really kind of try to break emotions down and have those types of conversations, it's just not him. But that's also because he doesn't have those skills to do it. And actually, I wouldn't have those skills. I got those skills when I was 25, when my mother passed, and I went to therapy for a couple of years, and that's where it kind of like opened things up and changed a lot for me. So I think a lot of these things are, yeah, I think it's something that everybody struggles with, no matter, who you are. Women struggle with it in a different way. These are things that I think we all are trying to figure out. And I think also, as you rightfully said, parents, especially fathers of the different generation. I live in the UK, so the UK is very much stiff upper lip. You're not supposed to, you don't talk about your emotions. You just go to the pub and have a pint, and or maybe multiple pints. And it's really interesting because more of my friends here are women than men. So I'd say 60-70% of my friends are women than men. And I've had a good friend over here, commit suicide. I realized that during that process, a lot of my male friends just really, you could tell they just couldn't talk about their emotions and what was going on if they were sober. Now, if they weren't sober, then they could talk about it. But just to kind of go on from there is, Ben, you obviously your background, you're in the military, as you said, and Jordan, you said you had this pretty traumatic life experience, but you both have seemed to come to a place that's, you seem very emotionally, mentally aware. And I know that both of you said you didn't go down the therapy journey. So like, what can you guys talk about your journeys and how you came to where you are today?
Yeah. I actually I love and hate that question.
Okay.
And the reason for it though is
It's a good question.
I'm not a good example of how to overcome something. And here's the reason is when I left home at 18, went in the Marine Corps. In 2005, 2006, when you signed up, especially the Marine Corps, you know where you're going. You know what you signed up for, right? It was only a few years after 9/11. You know what's going on. And so for me, especially growing up in this, like we said, bubble of Orange County, and leaving home, getting stationed in North Carolina in the South, like the South is a real thing, in the best way. Like Southern hospitality, oh man, so rad. Like so, almost for lack of better terms, like traditional and old school, and people still hold the door open for each other and say thank you and please and hey, how you doing? You don't just awkwardly look at each other. It's like so many cool things, but again, going through the Marine Corps, you know what you're going to. And I was in an infantry unit, so I know exactly where I was going and where I was heading. And I remember going to Iraq. That was my first deployment, and just experiencing some of the things you experience for the very first time. You're in fight or flight. You're basically in fight almost that entire time, right? So 8 months of just being up, high, high, high. Like you're revving 24/7. You don't have time to let off that gas. If you do, either you or your friends are gonna be dead. It's all gas, no brakes. And when you're 18, 19, 20, you think that's okay. You think it's normal. Like you can do it. Like you'll sleep when you're dead. Blah 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 blah. And then we came home from that deployment, and you start to see the shift in some of these guys and girls, but I wasn't really around girls almost the whole time. So I'm going to speak predominantly towards men again, but you see the shift in these men, and you rationalize with yourself and you say, oh, Johnny over there's that's what PTSD is. He's crazy. He's lost it. He's doing all these things. Then you look at yourself and your buddies and you're like, oh, yeah, we're chilling. We're normal. Like what we're doing is normal. What Johnny's doing, not so normal. And then you deploy again. And again, you're 7 to 9 months to a year of all gas, no brake once again, right? The second one for me was Afghanistan. That was the one that I think radically changed the rest of my life in different ways of doing that. I came home from that deployment, and again, you look at others. That was kind of our metric back then. I mean, you look at the Vietnam guys, and they're just now getting the treatment that they should be getting, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, but they're just now getting it. So your metric for us in the unspoken way is we just look at each other. And if Johnny's crazier than you, that's what the PTSD thing is. That's your marker. And so for me, I'm saying all of that to say, when I came home and got out in 2010, and try to just jump back into normal life in this Orange County bubble, that is when the changes started to happen in me. That's when the drinking started. That's when the partying started. That's when the hooking up with every girl I wanted to started. That's when the fight started. That's when the mentality of I have gone and done and seen things that no other person, unless they were with you, will ever understand. So I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it, and no one's going to stop that. And again, the comparison to that is all of my roommates in the Marine Corps were way crazier than me. They again, for lack of better terms, they were the Johnnies. They were the ones that had lost it. So for me, I was like, oh, dude, I'm fine. I'm living my life. I'm doing me. I didn't get the college days, so I'm now having those. And I went through a pretty gnarly episode. I call it an episode. It's not a good term. I went through some crazy like PTSD in my own life. But from the outside looking in, I had it figured out. That's when I met Jordan, actually, is when I was in the thick of going through that stuff. But from the outside looking in, you would think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would think I had it pretty much figured out. Like I was a younger dude. I was in shape. I had started my own business already. From the outside looking in, you would look at me and be like, dang, dude, Ben's got it figured out.
Yeah.
And, you wouldn't see like the random nights of like waking up in like night sweats or just vivid dreams beyond anything you could imagine, where you feel like you're there, you smell like you're there. And so my parents got a little worried, and my mom especially was definitely worried about me. Dude, I'm talking, I was doing some stupid things, and I don't know how many times I drove home drunk, not even knowing how I got home. I don't know how I didn't hurt somebody in a fight or somebody hurt me. I was fighting weekly. Like I'm talking like Green Street Hooligan style. You like that reference? But that was literally like my life, and it was normal. And I think the problem for me and what I was going through is a lot of the people in my life at that time didn't know what to do, right? Like literally didn't know what to do, in the sense of, oh, he'll be fine, or he just came home from war. Like he's
got to process it.
Yeah, he's got let him figure it out. And I tell people this all the time. This is why I said I'm not a good example of how to fix it. I have nothing against therapy, not at all. I told my mom I would do it for her because she was so worried about me. So I went. And this particular therapist, psychiatrist actually, was the epitome and mold and typical stereotype of someone sitting in a chair across from you, asking you some kind of lame questions, considering I'm already in your office, and writing it down on a clipboard and trying to act as if he understood what I was saying, when he had no clue of the background and the just crap that I had just gone through. But you're going to sit across from me and tell me these blanket, quote unquote, therapist style responses and tell me, oh, this is how I should be feeling. Or instantly, the big turnoff for me back then was he wanted to prescribe me a bunch of pills right away, like right off the bat. And I got a little pissed off because I just had some friends kill themselves because of, not knowing what to do. These people just give them all these pills, and then they go and drink and wonder why their life sucks, right? And they want to just end it. And so I was already clearly triggered very easy with a lot of things. And all that to say, man, is I went through a lot of crap. And the reason why, again, I said I'm not a good example is because I woke up one day and I was genuinely disgusted with who I was. 1,000,000%. was just disgusted. I said I was one thing. I said I was this like good Christian guy. I said I was doing all these things, but in reality, I wasn't doing any of that crap, and I was being a total arrogant hypocrite. And I just hated it. I looked in the mirror, I saw an empty chair, and that empty chair to me symbolized a couple of the buddies I had just lost, the girl that I thought I was going to marry that I broke up with over the phone because she called me on a bad day. That chair just represented so many things in my life. And I remember it. I was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I flew home and I stopped. I stopped all of it. I stopped the drinking, the going out, the girls, all of it until I understood how to control it. And not very many people can do that, obviously. And that's why I say I love that question, but I hate it because I don't have an answer on how I did it. I can tell you I'm a very big believer in your mind and how powerful it can be. And when I chose to do something, or I chose to fix something, or I chose to change something, I just did it.
Was there anything like, I'm not therapy, but was there anything like any books or anything that you used to like, help you understand your mind and how you're thinking? Because you said you had some really vivid dreams and things like that. So, were you just able to one day to the next be like, okay, I need to focus on this?
It was a mixture. Coming from an amazing support group, family, friends, a network of people that loved me, for me, and genuinely, obviously, just saw that I was not the same kid that left in 2006. A mixture of those people, a mixture of me having to figure it out because I had already started my business, so it was kind of like a jump all into that type of thing. And then the third one, for me, and what I did was my faith, and jumping back into God's word and God's promise for our lives. And again, I know there's not a lot of there's people that aren't Christian that won't understand what I'm saying, but to me, my faith and that support group that I had radically changed my life. And I that's the only answer I have. And again, that's why I always say, like, I'm not the best example to ask, because like I just got asked to speak to some veterans over horse therapy. And I told the lady, it's like, I would love to do that, but you're going to ask me what I did to change. And I'm going to give you the same answer I just did. And some people will get it and some won't. And that's okay.
Yeah, but I think actually, even though, as you said, it's, you're not maybe the typical way of thinking it, but actually, I do think there's interesting for some people, because there's not one specific way to do it. I'm not very religious, but one of my really close friends is quite religious, and she talks to me about how the community and the people and all these types of things, and you have a kind of, I'm saying it the right way, you have almost like a North Star to follow. Yeah. So I do think that someone hearing this, that might resonate with some people, might not resonate with other people. But I do think that actually, it does have value, because not everyone fits into a specific box. Like, I know people who, unfortunately, with therapy, I know people have had bad experiences with therapy. I've actually had bad experiences with therapy, but I'm very lucky. So my first experience with therapy was really good. So the third one that I had that was shit, I was like, okay, I know this isn't it. So I was able to. But if that was my first experience, I would have probably been like, screw this. Like, this is awful. Why am I doing this? So, but also, if you ask me, when I was, like, it took me 2.5 years to go to therapy. My mother was battling cancer for 3 years. And my friend before that passed, a really close friend. And basically my girlfriend begged me for years to go. And so it was not out of me just being like, I need to go do this. It was someone pushing me quite hard into it. I think it's a very valid how you've kind of looked at it and how you've gone through it. So it obviously worked for you.
Yep. Jordan, you're up.
Yeah. I'm kind of a bad example too, to be honest. I will say this though. So I did talk to, so I guess, we'll start at the beginning. So my family, when I was in high school, literally we had a business, and our business partner cut and ran and took everything from us. And we literally went from, we were about to sign a contract to the point where I've always wanted to fly my entire life. I was 16 years old, actually looking at airplanes to buy. because I was gonna be able to buy an airplane. I helped to build this company with my dad um, instead of going to public school. I decided to homeschool one year and help them build this company, and it was about to really explode. And until our business partner took everything, cut and ran, stole all our money, and we became homeless literally overnight to the point where we were hiding cars and in garages and stuff like that. And I grew up actually in a Christian household and became super bitter. So that's kind of how it all started. I was super, super bitter and angry and with just life in general, and watching my parents have to struggle, who were just amazing people. And so I held that anger, paired it with quite a bit of alcohol, and paired it with a group of friends who really liked to drink, and also who had some really hard life experiences. So my first my first way of coping with things when I was really young, way too young, was we would drink and we'd sit out by the fire and we'd talk through things, which oddly, I think, minus the alcohol, sitting around and talking through your feelings is actually a really great thing to do, which is interesting because it's later on in life, it was something that I really longed. So somehow when we were in, 17 years old, we figured that out, that when you're going through, like my best friend literally watched his dad drink himself to death. And he had foster kids in his home and all these different things. And life had just, his life was challenging. And to sit there and both of us just sit and talk through our issues and how we were feeling and the anger that we had and the happiness that we had and all that kind of stuff was almost like my first non-real therapy session. Um, but it instilled something in me early on that you can never underestimate the power of sitting around a fire with a group of guys or girls and just talking through what you're going through, unashamed that someone's going to judge you for it. Because we would have just deep, dark conversations and challenge each other and push each other and sometimes play devil's advocate just for the sake of doing it. I was just really blessed to have a best friend like that. So that transitioned into me trying to figure out what my life path was. I became an entrepreneur for a little bit, and then, long story short, I ended up in EMS. Trying to decide where I want to go with the story, but ended up in EMS and really found a good niche for me, and I did well. And it was really interesting because although we were in Orange County, my buddies and I, we actually went through. I've shared my 5 years I worked on an ambulance and in paramedicine with a lot of I started off, the whole reason I got into EMS was my dad and I were driving down the side of the road and a guy decided he wanted to commit suicide by dousing himself in gasoline and lighting himself on fire. And my dad and I literally went into a burning car, pulled him out, and put him out. And that was my first experience with EMS, right? Just right off the bat. I literally went down the next day and signed up for my EMT course and was like, I need to get licensed to help people, because after we put him out, I didn't know what to do. And I was just standing there angry that I couldn't help this man more. He ended up being able to say goodbye to his family and then passed away later on. But I ended up having a really interesting EMS career. Most people would say I saw a lot more than what would be typical in an entire 20, 30, 40-year career. I saw in about 5 years. And it just never really seemed to bother me. And I don't know. I say that weird because I'm not sure if it never bothered me or if it was paired with my anger and my need to rebel against my parents. I drank a lot, and that's because that's just what me and my friends did. We drank, we ate burritos, we rode motorcycles, we, chased girls. That's just, we were being, and it's funny because that's when I met Ben. We were kind of both doing the same thing roughly. He was a few years older than me, so he could go to the bars. I couldn't, but we were roughly doing the same thing. And that, I feel like that's like that's what society tells you you're supposed to do in your 20s if you're a dude, like I was smoking Marlboro Reds and drinking beer and chewing tobacco. And I thought I was a cowboy. I was riding bulls and just doing crazy stuff. But it was weird. I ended up going into paramedic school, and and I was in paramedic school, and I wasn't working on an ambulance at the time because I had to focus 100% on that. And we were going through like our books and we were going through slideshows, but at night I was having the craziest night terrors. I'd never struggled with anything like that. And I would wake up, and my girlfriend, my now wife, but my girlfriend would be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. Like, I honestly, I'm starting to think there's something wrong with me because I'm having these just night terrors where I'm like ripping people's faces off, and like they're so graphic, and I can smell it, and I can taste it, and I can hear it, and I'm like, what's going on?" And I happened to bump into a buddy whose dad is like a psychiatrist, but he specializes in like murder victims and stuff like that. He actually works like in like jails and stuff like that. He goes in and talks with them. And I just asked him, I was like, "Hey man, this is what's going on. Like, am I crazy? Like, am I actually losing my mind?" And he goes, "No, man, not at all. This is completely normal." And he just like literally normalized it for me. He's like, "Hey, when you're on the ambulance, your brain is switched into a mode where it's ready to handle that kind of stuff. And your body, the way your brain works, you're really good at compartmentalizing it, and you don't have any issues. And some people are just like that. You're really blessed with that. And now when you're in a school setting, your brain's not set for that mode. And so when you're going home, it's processing it, it's putting it in the wrong folder. So it has to process somewhere else." And being a kind of computer guy, I'm like, "No, that makes perfect sense." And after that, I had no more night terrors. Like, it was literally, he was like, "Yeah, you're not crazy." I was like, "Oh." And then after that, it was fixed, which was, so I say I'm a bad example again. It was like, I couldn't tell you, like, that would never really happen with anyone else other than just in my brain. It made sense. So it clicked over, and then they started, I guess, my brain started filing things appropriately and all that kind of stuff. But what happened was, long story short, I just kind of continued down the same lifestyle that I was doing. It was just kind of the same thing, except now, I was engaged. I wasn't chasing girls or anything like that. But I had some men step into my life, and it was because of a business opportunity. It's because I left paramedicine to try to pursue this business opportunity. And he looked at me, he's like, "Are you really being like the kind of man that you think you should be?" And I was like, no. And he's like, "Well, I think you should start acting like it." Like, he's like, "You should probably change what you're doing and start acting like it." And so that began a journey of me working on self-development. And that was reading tons of books, Tender Warrior by Stu Weber, How to Win Friends, Influence People, a lot of John Maxwell, Hung by the Tongue, the Atomic Habits, all this different stuff. I went down a personal development rabbit hole, and in that just kind of refound myself and refound my faith, and realized that I didn't want to be the person that I wanted to be the person that I was claiming to be. And so that's really what my buddy challenged me to do. And it was cool because he was brutally honest to the point sometimes where he really pissed me off about when I'd bring him problems. He'd be like, I'd be like, "Hey, Caitlin is doing X, Y, and Z." He's like, "Sounds like you're being a dick." And I'd be like, "Wow, what a jerk." And then I'd sit there for a second and I'd go, "Man, I kind of am being a dick." And I was like, "All right, I gotta go apologize. Let's go apologize." So that's what I'm saying. I didn't go to therapy. I don't think therapy is a bad thing by any means. What I am starting to see, though, unfortunately, and this is not knocking therapy, is we're a generation. I saw a statistic that we have more people going to therapy now than we ever have, and especially the younger generations. And yet we're having still the highest suicide rate. And I just challenge people, and whether it's therapy or whether it's, you're getting into meditation or whatever it is, are you going at it with a mindset of, I just want to I want my feelings acknowledged, and then I want to continue in those feelings? Or is it, I actually want to get better and I want to do what it takes to get better? Because I feel like people are using therapy unfortunately as a cop-out. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm saying that therapy can be used very, very well with like a scalpel and helping you out. But it's all about how you go into it. If you're going into it with just like, I want somebody to acknowledge that, yes, poor me, and then sit in that pity, or are you gonna take it and utilize it and take the tools and make yourself a better person, and then go out there and impact other people? That's my story.
No, I really appreciate that. I actually very much agree with that around therapy. It's funny because in England, they always say, because I'm American, they're like, everybody in America goes to therapy. And it's something they always say. And I go, well, Correct. I was like, but a lot of people just go to therapy, but they don't actually put in the work. So nothing changes. But also, a therapist should not be basically validating your emotions. It's not what a good therapist should do. So if a therapist is just saying you're right, you're to whatever, unless that guy who
Yeah.
helped you said, hey,
Yeah.
you're being a
You're
dick,
not
then
crazy.
sure. Yeah, or you're not crazy, sure. But I think it's I think that's also is like a therapist should not be one giving you a ton of advice. They shouldn't be validating all your feelings depending on what it is. So I do think I do agree with that 100%. And actually, I also think in today's day and age, everybody has anxiety and depression and ADHD and all these things. I'm like, that's not statistically possible. And it is like, I'm not Elon Musk. I was like, but I'm like, you might be anxious and you might have moments of sadness and these things, but that does not make you clinically depressed and clinical anxiety.
Yeah.
But I think like, as you said with the doctor just giving pills, like I think that's also another thing. It's I think a lot of people are very quick, especially in the US, very quick to just oversubscribe. And that also doesn't help as well long term. Like, yes, it is for the right person at the right time. If done correctly, it can be great. But also if you're not the right candidate for it, then actually it doesn't have an impact. And also, if you haven't worked on yourself, there's going to be a day where you get off of it. So what do you do when you're done? It's like being on a diet that's not feasible to continue doing. Like, people are like, oh, I'm just not going to drink. I'm not going to eat carbs. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to dessert. I'm not doing this. I'm like, yeah, but what happens when you start doing that again?
Exactly.
So I do agree with everything you're saying and kind of how you go about it. Now, transition. One thing I wanted to ask you, both of you, is, so I really love the values and the mission of, being a good dude, good dad, everything like that. Is there anything you have, like traditions or things you do with your family that kind of emulate those values at home?
Oh, shoot. If you got one, go for it.
I know actually one for you.
Oh,
It doesn't have to be a
okay.
tradition, but
No,
anything
I
you
just-
do on a day-to-day basis to kind of emulate those things.
On a day-to-day basis, yeah. I mean, one thing that I love that I do with my kids every night, as long as I'm home, let's put it that way. As long as I'm home,
Sure.
I'm putting them to bed. I want to be there at the end of the night. I do a few things. The first thing I say, hey, I love you. I'm proud of you. You can do anything you want. You can be anything you want to be if you're willing to pay the price. And people might agree with that statement. They might not. But I want my kids to know that they're always loved, that I'm always going to be proud of them no matter what, and that I really want them to, that I'm going to support them in no matter what they're going to do or what they want to be. But everything comes with a price that is going to pay. And then I let my son, I told my daughter, I give her, I go over some affirmations with her, I speak positively over her. And then we always go through a quick verse that says, or something my parents taught me when I was a kid. God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power, love. They repeat power, love, and a sound mind. They say that. And then I say, you're what? And they go, I'm brave. God makes me brave. I'm brave because God makes me brave. And that's with my daughter. And then with my son, I go through that same process. The only difference is, I say, we protect and defend people that can't protect themselves because we're the what? He goes, sheepdogs. I go, that's right. So we protect others, we defend others, we watch out for others. I speak affirmations over him. And then we do the same thing. God's not giving me a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And we happen to, just us, this is our thing. We read a Bible story together as a family. I give them both kisses, and I let them know that they are loved and cherished, and that there's nothing that can separate them from my love. So that's one thing that we do every night that I'm home.
That's awesome. Well, first off, that sounds like a beautiful thing. I guess I don't know how old your children are, but have you seen these things have actually like made an impact on them, and like how it's kind of put them maybe down the right path as young kids?
Yeah. So I mean, my kids are really young. So my son's 3, my daughter's 2.
Okay.
He'll be 4 in September. But one way that I'm seeing this play out, and these things that are playing out was really cool. I actually saw my daughter the other day do it. She's very adventurous, and anytime she's doing something new, she'll talk to herself and she'll say, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And she'll keep repeating that to herself until she achieves whatever it is that she wants to achieve. And then when she does it, she goes, I did it. And I go, that's right, baby. And if she fails, I go, that's okay, baby. I love you. let's do it again. And I got this. I got this. I got this. And she just repeats that to herself over and over and over. And my son before too, he's come in. He's like, hey, Dad, I'm having bad dreams. I'm having bad dreams. I'm scary. And I'm like, well, God's not giving you what? He goes, a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. He goes, I got this. And then he'll turn right around and go back into his room and lay down. And, those are just little impacts I'm seeing so far. I'm new to the parenting journey, like my kids. We had a guest on that the other day that said something so beautiful. He goes, I'm a new dad every single day. He's like, I might have some tools from the day before, but I'm a new dad every single day. I'm going to be facing new things every single day. And I have a chance to succeed or a chance to mess it up every single day, but I'm going to give it 100%. So, yeah, that's kind of so far what I'm seeing. What about you, Ben? What are you guys doing?
I don't do all the stuff Jordan does. He's apparently one-upping me right now.
I'm just a better dad, clearly.
It's not about comparisons. Back to the first part.
Right? Honestly, no. I think something that is very practical that I choose to do in like my husband and dad journey that I think every single person can benefit from is I've just learned to be very intentional. And I'm talking about intentionality with when I am home. Yeah, I'm a business owner. I have lots of things going on. But I always like kind of joke around with my wife. I was like, dude, I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not a heart surgeon. Like there are emergencies that obviously you can't brush off, but for the most part, I'm intentional when I am home with my time. And that includes, the intentionality behind that is I can check my phone after dinner. I can check my phone after the kids go to bed. I can just be intentional. And I think that's something that I try to do on a daily basis is be intentional in all of those components. And I think something that's very practical for other people to use like in all forms of their life.
Oh, okay, you're being a little modest a little bit. So I'm gonna kind of So I'll say this man is busier than any person that I've ever met in my entire life. Like he's incredibly busy all the time, and yet he makes time for his kids. Like I see him go out of his way to make sure that his wife is loved, that his kids are loved, and that they know that they're loved. And it's cool. Like if you see him in his dad role, it's something that like, it's cool that I have all those little rituals at the end of the night. Yeah, that's great. But he's like legitimately a role model for me as a dad, looking at his intentionality and the time that he intentionally puts in with his kids is a beautiful thing to watch and is like legitimately second to none. So I'm not going to let you off that easy, bro. Sorry.
But that goes back to intentionality though. And I like to talk about that because it's something I had to learn. I didn't like just wake up one day and I was like, oh man, I'm going to be intentional, right? Like it was something I had to learn and I had to teach myself. And just like therapy, if you don't put the work in, it ain't going to do anything. And
just like anything.
Yeah. So, yeah.
No, that makes complete sense. And the thing with kids, it's just the thing that I don't have children, but the thing that makes me nervous, like you were talking about, Ben, was the whole phones thing. Is like can't imagine that minefield with social media and all these things. I think that also is what makes a lot of these kids have a lot of issues with mental health that we never. I feel very lucky that I didn't have that stuff as a kid. But when I was a kid, Nintendo came out. That was the craziest thing that we had.
Yeah.
So I feel very lucky we don't have that. So I don't know how. I think getting one thing I have seen with my friends who have kids that they really try to limit phone time with their kids in front of their kids. It has a pretty strong impact on them. The way they act and all those types of things.
We have a distinct privilege, Ben and I, of working with a lot of like younger. He employs a lot of like younger people, like early 20s, 18, 17, owning coffee shops and stuff like that. And so at the restaurant, I was talking to these two younger girls. One of them had just come back to college for the summer, or come back from college for the summer, and was telling me about this experience that she had with this boy. And at the end of the day, she was like, "Yeah, I told him I didn't need what he was trying to shove at me." And she's like, and I was like, "Well, why was that?" She's because my dad told me what my self-worth was, and I knew that if my dad wouldn't have been proud of that guy that I was dating, then I probably shouldn't be dating him. And I was like, that's profound. And so like, why is that? Like, how is your relationship with your dad? And so we dove deep into it. And basically these two girls that I was talking to, two completely different stages of life, both have an amazing relationship with their father, and they pull their identity from that. And as a father, I'm watching, because I'm also afraid of my kids growing up and with social media and stuff like that. But I'm seeing these kids that are like 18, 19. They had the peak of social media. Well, at the time, like the peak Instagram social media days, and they're still coming out the other side and knowing their self-worth because they had parents that were present and reminded them and said that they loved them and did things with them and took them on daddy-daughter dates and did all this kind of stuff. So it's like, why that's part of why our mission statement is the way it is, and why this business is that we have, and this platform that we're trying to create, is that if you're an intentional parent, a lot of the things that worry us in life are going to melt away. And I feel like we're going to end up having kids that come out on the other side. I have a lot of hope for the next generation, especially if we can create good dudes and good dads to be out there to love and support, their kids and their future kids. And or just being like a fun, awesome uncle that's loving and supporting too.
Well, on that, I have a question for you guys. So I know that you're trying to create, as you said, a platform where you interview men or fathers. So what's your kind of long-term vision with it? Is there anything that are you trying to take the online, offline, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, we've been talking about that actually. A big dream of ours would be to like just create more. I'm trying to think of an example I could use before I answer, but I don't have one right now. One of the things we'd love to do is obviously have like the platform, have the website, the merch, the apparel. That's cool, right? Because every single time one of us is wearing one of our things, it's almost a conversation piece, right? Like when you look at it, it's like, oh, good dude, good dad. What is it? Like, that's cool. Or they might make like kind of like a snarky remark about it, and it opens like that like communication line to be able to be like, oh yeah, like you can joke about it, but it's also whatever. But we would love to have we've talked about doing like quarterly meetups. Obviously we're going to start local because we're here, but almost creating more of an actual, like, for lack of better terms, and it's cheesy, but a movement of what it is just to be like a good dude. And that's kind of like the dream.
Yeah, obviously we're going to keep the podcast going, merch, stuff like that, do the meetups. We talked about eventually down the road, doing like almost like a, lack of a better term, like men's like fun summer camp style thing, where it's like, we get together for, a few days, people fly out to somewhere and we all hang out. We do those campfire talks. We, do some awesome things, whether it's, you're into, maybe there's a therapist there that you want to do that, or there's shooting bows and arrows, there's, working out, there's doing all these different things. That's kind of one thing we had vision, but really like at the end of the day, we just want to help create conversation around change, change in what it means to be a man, change in the role that men have on society, and change. We just want to create change within men. That's really what we'd like to see. So I told myself early on, if this business blows up or it totally tanks, as long as we impact, somebody, I don't really care about the rest. So that's kind of, I think we're going with it.
Great. Well, on that, I just want to thank you guys for joining. It was a really interesting conversation. I'll definitely keep following what you guys are doing. Obviously, as many combos evolve, I hope we can do some more stuff together, because there's some things that I want to do as this evolves as well, and kind of broaden it out to a bigger community. So I'd love to stay in contact. If you guys ever come to London, give me a shout.
Yeah, hit you up, dude.
My wife wants to go badly.
Mine does too.
Well, I've been here 8.5 years, so I can happily show you guys around.
Let's go.
Thank you for inviting us. I think that's another cool thing. Like, we're all talking about like what we want to do, right? But this is just a small example of that. Like, we would have never met you, or realistically, I probably would have never come across your profile because it doesn't hit my algorithm. So if we didn't do what we're doing, this is just like I said, like a micro, cause, or a micro metric, I guess, if we could, like, you want to use it that way, that what we all are doing, including you, Corey, is like, it does matter and it is valuable. And there is worth in taking the time to do this and to try to genuinely help people. Like change is an illusion. There's nothing that happens unless there's an actual transformation. And that comes with just putting work in all areas of our lives.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having us on. We were talking about, we're excited for what you're doing too, and with your podcast and destigmatizing therapy for men and stuff like that, because that's awesome. I mean, yeah, I mean, we're here to help support you in any way we can, and we're stoked to have you. Thank you for making us. This is our first time being guests on a podcast as Good Dude, Good Dad. So this is sweet for us. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you for joining. I hope you guys have a good rest of the day.
You as well.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.